You start talking and losing people in the first 30 seconds, not because your ideas are not good, but because you're taking 5 minutes to explain what should really only take about 30 seconds. If your team's eyes glaze over when you start talking, this brief is for you. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss how a thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. For today's executive brief, we're talking about the leadership skill nobody really teaches, but everyone judges you on: concise communication. 20 minutes on how to say less and mean more. So, what's the crossroads here? You're in a meeting and you say something that you think is actually really important. You start explaining the background, the context, the various considerations, the exceptions, the history of how you got there, and 10 minutes later, you're still talking. Well, everybody else has pretty much checked out at that time. They're looking at their phones, they're looking around the room, they're checking emails on their laptops. And then finally, somebody will work up the nerve to ask, okay, so what's the bottom line? Or what is it exactly that you're recommending? Or look at this scenario: you send emails, and your emails are so lengthy that people are scrolling through it to try to understand the gist of the email without having to wade through all of these extra words. You actually think that you're being thorough, but I can tell you, they don't think that you're being thorough and you're not getting to the point. And I actually just had a conversation about this recently when I went to get my hair cut, and a gentleman was just explaining that he had invited someone into a meeting and had made a couple of introductions. And 45 minutes later, they still were not even talking about the subject that they were supposed to meet to discuss. People get long-winded and they go on these rabbit trails, and it just derails an entire meeting, and you lose people, and you lose people actually early on in the process than what you think. So then this is not just affecting just you and your team. This is affecting any leader who thinks that people are basically tuning them out when they talk. Or maybe you get interrupted frequently and you're not sure why people are interrupting you. Or maybe you even notice that your messages don't even land the right way, and that there's still some confusion regarding what it is that you're trying to indicate to people. Let me tell you, the stakes are high in this regard because long winded communication does not make you sound smart or thorough. It really makes you sound unprepared and unclear. And it also makes you sound unfocused. Okay. When people have conversations with you, or when you're presenting information and you're continuing to provide all of this extra detail, well, people just, they're not even focused anymore because you're not focused. So you cannot hold an audience's attention if people do not think that you're focused and know how to keep their attention on the topic at hand. So every extra sentence erodes your credibility. And I can tell you that senior leaders who can't concisely communicate, they're not advancing at the levels where they really want to be, because executives don't have time to wade through all of that clutter. It's just too much. And the root issue is this: it's not necessarily that you're a bad communicator, but what you've done is you've confused thoroughness with clarity. And you think that more details mean that there's going to be better understanding, or that you have a better grip on what it is that you're presenting. And really, all you've done is introduce more confusion into a situation that did not need it. Okay, so the problem is you're processing your thoughts aloud instead of doing the work to distill them down first. So you've demonstrated, whether it's to your team or to your colleagues in some high level meeting, that you haven't thought through enough of this information to distill it down into just a few points. And I am so convinced that people who are long winded, they lack awareness, because what it demonstrates is that you don't take the social cues that people are giving you. You have to know your audience, and you have to be prepared to present to them the information that they need based on who they are and how they will use the information. So I want to give you several reasons as to why I think leaders over explain, because it's important that we understand this first. Reason number one: fear of being misunderstood. And in addition to that, I would hyphenate it with the CYA: cover your assets. Okay. And part of this, what goes along with this, in my opinion, is that you've taken on a team member mindset versus a leadership mindset. A leader is not necessarily afraid of being misunderstood. You're presenting the information that you have based on what you had at the time that you made the decision or were preparing that recommendation. The team member who is concerned about being harmed reputationally or even with their work, so, some type of performance evaluation that might be negative as a result, maybe that has to do with some experience. But the mindset should not be that you provide all of the information and confuse everybody along the way, because really that's all that it's doing. Number two, lack of preparation. What that shows is that you have not clarified your own thinking and that you're figuring things out as you talk. And not only that, you're just kind of sharing things and hoping that the information that you're sharing is going to land. And really, all it does is just kind of turn people off. Reason number three, you're proving your expertise. And this one I call ego driven, because this is really about you talking and sharing what you know. And people do want to know what you know. Okay, so we do want to underscore that. But what you have to do is, again, tailor your information to your audience. Okay, so you can demonstrate your knowledge and do it in a way that is actually helpful to them and does not push them aside or put them off. Because confident leaders state conclusions, insecure ones over explain. Remember that. Reason number four, avoiding discomfort. So direct statements feel abrupt or harsh. And I can tell you, I have an appreciation for asking a question and someone giving me a direct answer. I don't care if it's just no. I think we recognize that no and yes are complete sentences. And if that is all that is necessary, then leave it at that. We have grown accustomed to providing all of the additional explanation in the professional and personal settings. We think that it's required, and it's not. I love it when people ask me questions and all I have to do is just give them a few words. It makes it very easy for me, and I think it relieves them of having to wade through any additional information that might not have actually been necessary. So don't ramble because it wastes time. So here are some key points that you want to look for. Okay. One, executives make decisions in the first 30 seconds of hearing information because you already have an idea as to what's being presented. You're just looking for something that is either going to corroborate what you thought or give you uh, enough persuasive information to convince you to change your mind in the other direction. Right. Number two, the longer you talk, the less people retain. I think we all recognize this. You only really want what is important. So that's what you should present. Number three, clear, concise communication is consistently rated as a top leadership competency. How do you know this? Well, look at some of the job descriptions for a lot of the executive level or high executive level positions. And it doesn't even have to be a high executive level position. People want someone who can communicate consistently and effectively, and doing so concisely is going to be to your advantage. Okay. How many times have you stopped by someone's office and asked a question and you knew that you had to be prepared for a 30-minute conversation? There have been people, some of my colleagues, I have avoided asking questions. This is one of those things where you have your keys and your briefcase, your purse, your backpack in hand to show, okay, I'm about to leave. And so you try to ask the question on your way out the door, and your way out the door turns into a 20-minute diatribe on whatever it is that they have going on, or why it is that they needed to come to the particular conclusion that they did. Just way too much information. So here's some critical questions that you should consider. Number one, do people frequently interrupt you to ask, well, what's the bottom line here? What is the recommendation? If they do, then you know you might be long-winded. Number two, do your emails regularly exceed one screen of text, or do they require you to talk people through what it is that you sent to them in an email? If that's the case, you might be over communicating. And here's the third question. When you finish talking, do people look confused about what they're supposed to do next? Again, this goes into looking at those social cues, the body language, those nonverbal cues that help you to understand if something is resonating or if it's just completely going over their heads. Okay, so now we have some options, right? We want to look at several options, and I have three approaches to communication, and two of them will definitely kill your credibility. So option A, keep explaining everything in detail. Okay, so it feels like it's being thorough, like you're covering all your bases. Again, CYA, and no one can say that you didn't explain it or that they didn't know. But really, people are tuning you out. And so that's definitely a disadvantage of continuing with option A. And then the key messages, the key points get lost. Nobody really knows. And so then what you really find is that people are coming back to you asking for additional information because they didn't catch it after the first 30 minutes of discussion with you. So the reality is, you have to distill this down and recognize your audience, because if it's, especially if it's an executive level, they don't have time for all of the extra communication. Option B, send follow-up clarifications. Well, it feels like you're being helpful and responsive. And I want to be clear here because I think that there's a difference between sending a summarized recap of the discussion and then, or compared to rather, going on and on about what was already introduced and mentioned in a meeting. All of that is just doing too much. It only proves that you were not clear the first time that you spoke. That's really all that that does. And so the reality of this is that if you need to clarify after every communication, the problem is with the original message and with the messenger. So you have to learn to tailor your message. Option C, do the work to distill before you speak. So you want to distill down your message before you introduce it in a meeting or a discussion, right? And so what this is going to do is it's going to build credibility, and it's definitely going to respect people's time. And you want people to respect your time as well. Okay. And it will also be demonstrated that your message is going to land the way that you intended it. Now, this is definitely going to require some upfront thinking and some discipline, but because if you have a good handle on the information, it shouldn't require too much more than what you're giving it. Okay. And this is how executives communicate. Again, that 50,000 view. You have to know your audience. The executives want the 50,000 view. Your team, maybe they need the 10,000 view with a little more details, but you have to recognize who is receiving your message so that you can tailor it specifically to them. So how do we move forward with this? We have to learn how to communicate concisely, which point one, again, know your audience. So the first strategy is this: you start with the end goal or the bottom line in mind. So you have to lead with your conclusion, your recommendation, or your main point. Because if you do that, then already people understand, okay, this is the end goal here, and then then you can provide additional information as needed. Okay, leave people the option to ask questions. Okay, so this is the framework that I want you to work from. When you have the conversation or the meeting, or you're presenting something, you say, well, here's what I recommend, and this is the reason why, and just leave it at that. So that's your action for this week. Start every update with one sentence that states your point. Be as concise as possible. Strategy number two, use the 3 points rule. Limit yourself to three main points, period. Okay. If it goes beyond that, but and again, this might be specific to the type of project because maybe the project is going to require a ton of things, but try it with the first three. Okay. And then if you have more, then maybe that means that you're going to have to set up additional conversations because, again, we recognize that people have difficulty retaining important information. And so if it's not necessarily related to the specific topic at hand, you might have to break those things up into separate conversations to make sure that your point gets across. And so this is the framework from which you work. There are three things you need to know, dot, dot, dot. And then you proceed with sharing that information. Okay, so here's your action. Before any important communication, write down your three key points. And maybe you don't have three, maybe there are only two, but start by being prepared. Okay, strategy number three, practice the elevator pitch discipline. This is basically you providing that snapshot within 30 to 60 seconds. You should be able to explain it pretty quickly. And if you can't, maybe you haven't clarified how you really think about this. Okay, so that's your framework, is to do it in 30 seconds and then state the point clearly. So I want you to practice that in for your next proposal and do it within 30 to 60 seconds. Strategy number 4, cut the qualifiers and the hedging. I think you all know what this is, right? You're talking about the I thinks and maybes and sort ofs and shoulda, coulda, wouldas and all of those things. Get rid of those. Just state the point directly. People appreciate that. So before, you might have just said something like this: I was just thinking that maybe we should kind of, sort of, or coulda, shoulda. No, you want to get rid of that. So you want to go from that to we should consider, or this is my recommendation. And so that's your action. Okay. So in the next meeting that you have, really pay attention to the words that you're using and remove all of those filler words and get to the most important things. Because again, and this will work for you rather than against you, because people are going to be tuning in to the action that you're providing in your words. Strategy number 5, ask, so what, before you speak. So if someone says, so what, can you answer it in one sentence? What is the point? You should be able to provide some type of explanation to them very clearly. So this is the framework. The impact or the decision or the action needed is dot dot dot. Okay, so your action, your forthcoming action from this is that you should end every message by explicitly stating what you need from the listener. Make it as clear as possible. All of these things are going to be extremely helpful to you to assist you with cutting down on the long windedness, the extra words, and just wasting people's time. And it's going to be a boost to your time as well. And I think you'll find that you'll be more confident because you can communicate more concisely and effectively. So over the next 30 days, you got to exercise this muscle, right? So week 1, you want to practice starting with conclusions. Period. Start with the bottom line first. Week 2, limit all updates to 3 points max. And if you have to go beyond 3 points, then either be extremely concise in those first 3 or end up dedicating additional time to meet to discuss those extra points. Week 3, challenge yourself to half your typical speaking time. If you recognize that after listening to this and even thinking back on some feedback that others have provided to you, that you have been rather long-winded, okay, well then this is going to help you to reduce that down so that you can provide useful information in a shorter period of time. Okay? And then week number 4, do get feedback. Ask your colleagues, ask your team, am I clearer? Do you know what I need from you? Is this making a lot more sense? And I'm going to add this as well because I think that it's extremely important. If you have a trusted colleague at work, ask them, do they find you to be long-winded? Or or have they heard others indicate that maybe you could it would help you if you would reduce the amount of time that you spent on talking about some of these things and just get to the point. Okay, because that's going to be valuable to you. Okay, so here are some ways that you will know that you've actually been successful with this. One, people stop interrupting to ask for your point. Yeah, that'll be a good thing. Your emails get shorter and you get faster responses. If you ever notice that when you send really long, wordy emails, people are not quick to respond to you. Whereas if you send short emails, getting to the point of what it is that you need or providing what it is that they need, they will respond generally pretty quickly. Okay. The meetings that you lead, they end on time or they're early. I think everybody loves it when a meeting ends early, especially if you've gotten what you needed out of that meeting in less time than what was originally required. Okay. And then here's another one. People can repeat back to you what you said accurately, and you're all on the same page. So definitely count those as wins. So I'm going to summarize this for you, okay? Concise communication is not about being brief, it's about being clear. Okay. Executives do not have time to go through all of the verbal processing that you're doing. You have to think about what it is that you need to present, and then you present it and speak it concisely. The risk level is high, okay, because the leaders who cannot communicate concisely are not seen as executive material. I don't know that I've sat in a meeting with an executive and they've been the one to go on and on and on. Not if we're supposed to be meeting about something that's important. So your decision timeline is this week, okay? Your next meeting is an opportunity for you to practice. And the only way that you're going to get better at this is to intentionally practice this. So, whether it's an email, whether it's a voicemail, or whether it's an in person presentation, you have to exercise something so that you can demonstrate that you are working on concisely delivering information. All right. So you probably know some people who could benefit from this. So be sure to share this episode with them, and you might want to go back and listen to it again so that you can take down some of the strategies and implement those this week. These are things that you can do right now. And I'm encouraging you to do that because everybody prefers to have information communicated to them in a more brief and summarized manner rather than the extended version. We can leave the extended versions for the movies and the music, okay? So be sure to download your 4C decision tree so that you can work through your own communication challenges. And if you cannot explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So start with clarity, okay? Don't offer more words, be clear. And I appreciate that you took some time to step in and listen. And I am out. That's the end of our episode. And remember, crossroads reveal who you are, catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters. So make it count. I'll talk to you next week.